Deputy Morell.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I'd like to thank you and members for giving me the opportunity to deliver a statement at short notice, and I apologise for not being able to provide the text much in advance. As members will appreciate, this is a fast-moving situation, but I think it's important, given the significance of our sea links, that I provide this update today. Sir, there has been a great deal of media coverage from both Jersey and Guernsey in recent weeks, providing commentary on the ferry procurement process and the future of our sea links. In answering the media's questions and putting out public statements, we have had to take great care not to divulge commercially sensitive information or to prejudice the outcome of the procurement process. I regret that this has left only a small part of the picture in the public domain, and it is important that members have the full context to provide reassurance on our current position. Sir, in addressing the Assembly today, I want to give an overview of Jersey's decision-making process to date, and I am mindful that parliamentary privilege allows me to do so. In terms of context, I must first refer to the financial implications I mentioned earlier this week and have mentioned many times in the media. Members are aware that last year I received 2 requests for financial support from Condor Ferries. The first was for an €80 million guarantee, and the second for €40 million, with €10 million needed urgently. Condor's insolvency was ultimately prevented without the need for public funds from Jersey, but we decided with Guernsey to protect our lifeline services by engaging contingency at a cost so far of approximately £3 million to each island. Sir, this contingency option is not a decision we have taken lightly. However, given what we knew about Condor's financial position, it would have been simply irresponsible not to put arrangements in place to ensure our supply chain remained secure. Failure to do so would have presented unacceptable risk not only to our economy, but our ability to get essential food and medicine into the island. This was the prudent thing to do to protect the island's supply lines. I give this context because it helps explain why I have been so focused on Condor's finances, something which I've made very clear to both Guernsey and Brittany Ferries throughout the past year. I have repeatedly sought reassurance from Condor Ferries and their shareholders that the company will improve its financial position and be able to complete its contractual obligations under the current operating agreement. I'm yet to receive these reassurances. Instead, sir, I received notice from the chair of the board of Condor Ferries on the 11th of September, stating that, in the event that Condor Ferries was unsuccessful in securing the future operating agreement, the firm could not guarantee that it would be able to continue trading for the remainder of the operating agreement until March 25. The letter made it clear that Condor Ferries would likely require funding from the government of Jersey of up to £36 million in order to see out its contractual obligations. I replied to the chair on the 23rd of September expressing my concern that Condor Ferries may be unable to deliver on its contractual obligations inherent within the operating agreement, and asked for further assurances and an update on future shareholder support and intent. Despite further correspondence, these assurances have not been forthcoming. Guernsey had made it clear that they were going to award to Brittany Ferries, but I was not in a position to make this award because of my concerns about their financial situation. That's the Condor Ferries financial situation, for clarity. This was also because Condor Ferries continued to fail in the Jersey scoring, both on a binary yes-no point about the age of their fleet and on their financial situation. Sir, I should clarify at this point that since Guernsey's announcement of Brittany Ferries as their preferred bidder, we have sought clarification as to whether a new operating agreement would actually be signed by Condor Ferries or Brittany Ferries. The CEO of Brittany Ferries has confirmed that any agreement would be signed by Condor Ferries only as the operating company, and not with Brittany Ferries as the parent company. As of this year, or as of a new contract being signed, I believe, Brittany Ferries will hold a 51% ownership share of Condor Ferries, but Condor's financials as the operating company remain in a distressed position. The future operating agreement would therefore be delivered by Condor Ferries and not by Brittany Ferries. Therefore, I have to regard this bid as being from Condor Ferries. Part of this was because our analysis of Condor's business plan included growth plans that were deemed to be unlikely to deliver, as they were overly optimistic given the high levels of debt in the company, which, whilst there has been a promise of restructure, continues to remain at a very high level, and most importantly, their promises of future fleet investment are wholly dependent on successful refinancing in 3.5 years' time. Therefore, there is no guarantee of there ever being future fleet investment. Importantly, despite repeated requests for financial guarantees, These have not been forthcoming, and I am yet to receive adequate reassurance. As Minister, I firmly believe that I cannot ignore these concerns or warnings from our officers. Members may well be asking, well, why not go with the DFDS bid? I can tell members that by any common sense reading of the two bids, it is clearly the better of the two, promising more fleet investment more quickly and with a more stable corporation which is over 40% owned by a long-established charitable foundation for mariners. However, DFDS's bid failed on a technical legal point, one which I could not personally fathom because the legal element was still to be negotiated, but which I accepted. However, their elimination did not mean that I could easily jump to award to Condor Ferries for all the reasons I have just stated. I have said many times that ministers are the first line of scrutiny, and that includes scrutiny of processes. Ultimately, any decision is a political decision. I believe I have been elected to bring common sense and judgment to decision-making. Islanders are fed up with being dictated to by process, particularly when the process does not deliver what I would consider a sensible result. As I have moved through this situation, I have liaised with the Council of Ministers and Scrutiny. I have always asked, and I believe members can attest to this, am I seeing this wrong? Please tell me if I am. The response from all has been a resounding support, and as recently as last Friday, the Council of Ministers voted informally, but by a very large majority, to put into action our current plan, which is to abandon the previous process because I could not award to either bidder, and embark on a new, rapid process to confirm the new ferry company for Jersey. That process is short and simple. We're inviting both companies to provide details on what services they can offer. Meetings with the companies will be held next week. Independent evaluators will assess the bids. Officers will provide a preferred bidder recommendation by the end of this month. I will then seek Council Ministers' support for the recommendation, and we will then announce the winner, also by the end of this month. All of this is aimed at starting services at the end of March. There are strong reasons why we have taken longer than Guernsey, which I have outlined. We need to ensure financial sustainability of a 15-year contract, and we need to ensure investment in vessels. We need to ensure our freight aims are met, and that means delivering a flat rate card as required by the tender process, something which I have to add, Condor has failed to deliver so far. We must ensure that this is right for Jersey. We cannot be forced into a decision which we believe is wrong for Jersey, and the joint process, in my opinion, was on the cusp of delivering just that, a service that delivered uncertainty and risk for the islanders of Jersey. This new and fast process will allow us to make the right decision for Jersey's future lifeline ferry services. Thank you, sir.
Well, there is now a period of 15 minutes available for questions to the Minister. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, sir. And can I thank very much the Minister for that statement, which I think will come as a huge relief to the island to finally hear some of the arguments put out in the open in such clear and forthright terms. Can I ask him about one particular aspect of the previous bids that was mentioned a lot in the media, which hasn't yet been addressed, which is Guernsey's opposite number to the Minister said that DFDS bid, the reason they didn't go with the DFDS bid was because DFDS did not have the ferry fleet available. Can he comment on whether that is also his understanding?
Sir, I have to admit, and because I really don't want to end up in the tit for tat with Guernsey, that's not my desire here at all. I have refrained from speaking on that point. But, sir, I do know that in the DFDS bid, they named a fleet as their primary mobilisation fleet, which was not based on Condor Ferries vessels. It was based on a fleet, part of which they own, part of which would be chartered, but they were able to provide letters of charter, intent to charter, as proof that they have access to those vessels. That start-up fleet is an entirely viable start-up fleet. It was legally underpinned in terms of those letters of charter where the vessels weren't owned by them, by DFDS themselves. And so from my perspective, I have never had any concern about the ability for DFDS to create that mobilisation fleet, not using Condor's fleet.
Supplemental question, Deputy. Conor Thompson-Saviour.
Thank you, sir. It's just a few points of clarity I would like from the Minister, sir. my understanding is that Brittany Ferries owns 51% of Condor. I'm not sure if that was correct. And, but they're running it as a completely separate entity with regards to financing. I apologise if I misheard. Did the Minister say that Guernsey have signed with Brittany Ferries or with Condor? Thank you, sir.
Obviously, sir, I'm not in a position to confirm one way or the other who Guernsey has signed anything with. I just am not there. I cannot know. One of the questions that we had throughout the bids was, who is this bid with? So it was, and this is where I understand that the media were asking me, surely you knew, surely you knew. And it's like, no, over 9 months, we still had a lack of clarity over who this contract is with. The bid was made in the name of Brittany Ferries. That was the tender bid. It was made in Brittany Ferries' name. But, and we finally got confirmation of this a week last Friday in a direct email from the Chief Minister, I believe, to Brittany Ferries' CEO. It was one of the clarification questions, and it was given with that simple yes/no answer at the end. Will we be signing a contract with Brittany Ferries? Yes/no. And the answer came back, no. You will be signing a contract with Condor Ferries. And it was at that point that we've finally had real clarity. And I know in the tender documents it does mention it in places, Condor Ferries, etc., etc. But we weren't, until that a week last Friday, we weren't 100% sure who we would be signing the contract with. We then received that answer, and it gave us that clarity, finally, that we would be signing a contract with Condor Ferries.
A supplemental question. Deputy Kovac.
Thank you, sir. With both Condor and the FDS failing to meet key requirements, is the Minister confident that a new reliable ferry service can be secured in time to meet Jersey's needs, especially considering the tight timeline for a new agreement by March?
Yes, I am. With either bidder, I have no doubt that, March 1st, March 31st, they'll be able to deliver a service of sorts. Sorry, not of sorts. With either bidder, they can deliver that service. Condor, in theory, would carry on with what they've got. And the FDS have named the fleet that they would bring into action, and they are able to do that. I have no concerns there in that respect.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Yeah. If it won't be for any reason for the already mentioned companies to meet the requirements, is the Minister aware of any other ferry services provider having any interest in capacity of serving Jersey?
So we know there was a third bidder, and but that third bidder was eliminated at the first stage of the process. I won't go into the reasons here, that's not fair, but there was a third bidder. Whether they would be interested again, I don't know. At the moment, I don't think there is value in going out to the wide market again. That would just add time to the process. So we work with the two bids that we have.
Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir, and thank you, Minister, for the statement. I had a bit more clarity. Some of the questions was asked. My question, how and why Minister is confident now that in 2 weeks' time we will finalize the process, because we didn't manage to finalize, the government didn't manage to finalize the process from January. So it was 7 months of the process. Why do you think that? Why the Minister think that 2 weeks will be enough to finish to announce the bidder?
So obviously, the officer team has been working with the procurement department. We absolutely expect bids that come back in to be based in large part on original bids, changed for the circumstances. Having worked through that, we believe it is possible to absolutely deliver, given that they don't have to do a lot of work on the bids themselves, but they will have to change them according to the circumstances, that we believe it is possible to do that within the next couple of weeks. That's not something we're concerned about, and both my officers and the procurement team are comfortable with that.
Supplemental question.
Yes, thank you. Would the Minister advise if it will be his decision or it will be a vote at the Council of Ministers?
So from a legal perspective, sir, I am the decision maker. So in that sense, it's my decision. But I absolutely want this to be backed by the Council of Ministers. And I don't have big objections to the State Assembly, but I do think it becomes difficult only in terms of States Assembly, when you're talking through procurement processes, you can go down a lot of rabbit holes of detail, and so I think it becomes difficult. So my preference would be to seek Council Minister's support for an officer recommendation following that process, and to go with that Council Minister's support. That would be my preference.
Deputy Councillor Curtis.
Thank you, sir. Can the Minister explain how inter-island travel would work if we end up with separate companies involved? Would both companies be allowed to dock in both islands, and does the Minister expect any difficulties in this area?
So both companies would be allowed to provide inter-island travel. The exclusive part would be on the UK to Jersey, St Malo to Jersey part, not on the bits between the islands. So in that sense, I don't see any issues with that. And there would be no benefit in us refusing in some way boats arriving from Guernsey. It would just be that, for instance, freight would have to come directly from the UK or from France.
Supplemental question, Deputy. Deputy Wall.
Thank you, sir. My first question is, obviously we knew last year that Condor had financial difficulties because of the requirement for support. How was it that Condor were actually allowed, therefore, to put a bid into this if we already knew they were in financial viability? Did that not breach some of the entry criteria for putting a bid in?
It's obviously, as the incumbent, it's been really important to make sure that we have a free and open tender process, and also that we do not want to disrupt existing supply routes. I can't go into any detail about decisions made within the procurement process around that. I wasn't there for all of those decisions, but Condor were able to enter the bidding process, and I have to take assurance from the assessors that that was a reasonable thing to do.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Yes, sir. So just to carry on this, there are issues around volume. One of the big issues in all of these routes is around capital versus volume of turnover. Ships are very expensive to run. We obviously have a finite number of people who can use those routes. It begs the question, are the routes genuinely viable for a new operator? So that's probably one of the major questions. And is this model actually sustainable as the way the bidding process is going? The other question is, in terms of interest, you talked about interest liability of Condor. What's the scale of interest that they are paying away, which is not being reinvested in the fleet? Can you give us some indications on that?
Just starting with the last bit, I do not want to go into the intimate financial situations around any one company in any more detail than I feel I have to. So I wouldn't concentrate on interest rates beyond the main bank debt. I think is what I would call a reasonable interest rate, but there is another element after restructuring which attracts some very eye-watering interest rates, but those rates do not have to be paid on a regular basis. So in that sense would not immediately hit cash flow. But when I have learned about some of those more eye-watering interest rates, what I can say is that they also confirmed to me, in fact you might call them coupon rates rather than interest rates, they confirmed to me that this is a distressed asset, because the numbers around them were in the land of this is only asked when there's distress of such an asset.
Sorry, I don't think the first bit was answered. Thank you. Could you just read that one? Okay, so that was about the viability of the routes in terms of, and the model that, does it believe that this is a model, does the Minister believe that this is a model that actually is viable? I don't know whether the routes are growing or the numbers are falling. I don't know where he's at with all of those questions, but that's the general area.
Asked. Yes.
Yes, I need to be careful. Obviously, I don't want to prejudice the current new process in any way. It is absolutely viable. I've spoken to, in this case, particularly the newer company, the FDS, would you be interested in the Jersey-only route? The answer is yes, absolutely. And they are modelling their bid on, obviously, what they had already provided and adjusting it to a Jersey-only route. There are potential advantages for a Jersey-only route, shorter freight times, because the freight could come directly to the island. from the perspective of Jersey's amount of freight and passengers, it is an entirely financially viable option. Believe me, certainly as the new bidder, the FDS would not be interested in bidding if they did not think it was viable. So I have no concerns about viability, and I think actually we could benefit as an island from shorter sailing times.
I have 11 members still wishing to ask questions and 2 minutes left. I'm going to assume that the Assembly would wish to extend by 15 minutes, which has been...
So can I move that proposition to...
Yes, I wasn't even going to take it as a proposition. I was just going to accept that that would be the case, and that's what we will do. Connétable St Mary.
Thank you, sir. First of all, I thank the Minister for clarification on a number of points. My question relates to the paragraph in his statement which says, I've repeatedly sought reassurance from Condor Ferries and their shareholders that the company will improve its financial position and be able to complete the contractual obligations, etc., and concludes that I'm yet to receive those reassurances. It is not unusual in any commercial operation for a smaller company to seek the backing of its parent in a situation. And the question I have, therefore, is, has the Minister actually had direct contact with Brittany Ferries, and have they given any assurance, or have they declined to answer, or does he still hope that some form of assurance might be given by way of backing or guarantee?
So these sorts of assurances are exactly the sorts of assurances that I've been seeking, some of my ministerial colleagues have been seeking, and I know officers were seeking beforehand. So I will say, Brittany Ferries, in their initial bid, which is now dead in the sense that that process is finished, did say they would provide performance guarantees for Condor service. In itself, that sounds fine on the surface of it. But a performance guarantee is about saying we will make sure those boats will sail, we'll make sure we'll have the right frequency, we'll have the right amounts of vessels, etc. What that doesn't deal with is a situation in which Condor, if it were to go into administration, which has been my concern throughout, what would happen then? Because Condor's vessels would end up in administration. They're owned by Condor, they're not owned by Brittany Ferries. And so once Condor's vessels are put into administration, what can then be done for them? And that's the point. This is why wanting financial guarantee, and even financial guarantees are a concern because they can be talked around, let's say. But a performance guarantee is not enough because it does not deal with that situation in which Condor has gone into administration. And so for me, from my perspective, such a guarantee was not sufficient.
Supplemental question, Connétable?
Yes, I was simply wondering whether the initial reassurances given by Brittany Ferries could be extended to include the administration or the going to administration of Condor Ferries should that happen. Has that been attempted?
We have, what I can say is, I can't say specifically if that specific question has been put. I don't know. But what I do know is we have asked for continually for financial reassurance, financial guarantees, etc. How will you make sure that Condor does not go into administration in the future? But on top of that, there is the issue of the fleet investment. And for me, the fleet investment, I have read, and I just cannot understand how I, as Minister, can be assured on fleet investment when that fleet investment is entirely dependent on future refinancing. And that future refinancing has uncertainty around it. Number one, it may not happen. Number two, the interest rates around refinancing, because of changes in the world, at the end of the day, we know the world is currently going through a volatile period. We don't know where those interest rates for refinancing, should it be successful, would end up. And so if they were more stringent than they are today, it may be that Condor is not in a position to invest in the number of vessels it originally said it would invest in. It might have to invest in fewer or none at all. And so it's that uncertainty around the future refinancing and the entire fleet reinvestment being around that, being tied to that refinancing, that again provided a level of uncertainty that I just found was too large for me as Minister to accept on behalf of the island.
Connétable St Lawrence.
Thank you, sir. The Minister has told us that DFDS was clearly the better of the bids, or put in the best of the bids, promising more fleet investment, which he is concerned about, more quickly and with a more stable corporation. However, the bid failed on a technical legal point. 3 words, technical legal point. What did the Minister do to mitigate that technical legal point?
Thank you. Well, there's not a lot I could do because they were eliminated as a result of that. So the position was that they're not involved in that sense anymore. But I say I couldn't fathom that because what was being asked for was effectively something which would be negotiated at the next stage. So what happened, and I know I'm going into detail, was both parties were provided with a concession agreement, effectively the contract, and said, please mark up where you would like to negotiate potential changes to this agreement. The FDS came back with a list of things that it wanted to negotiate. And it was at that point, though, that it was marked, and it was deemed that the areas they wanted to negotiate were, I guess they were saying, so severe that we couldn't go ahead with it. But I didn't understand that because, one, I felt the area they wanted to negotiate made sense. And number two, the negotiation hasn't taken place. So how can we know what their final position will be? And we couldn't. So that's why I couldn't fathom it, because if the negotiation hasn't taken place, why is it being written off at this stage? And that was something that I just couldn't understand. But, and it's important, I accepted it. And so I said, fine, you know, the FDS are eliminated on that point. But that still doesn't mean that I can just immediately turn around and say, that's okay, we'll sign a contract with Condor/Brittany Ferries. And one of the reasons for that was...
Could I ask you to bring your answer to...
Oh, sorry, it was in the Jersey scoring. They had failed in 2 areas, 2 mandatory fails on the Jersey scoring. That wasn't reflected in the Guernsey scoring, but I had to look at that, and I'm here to stand up for Jersey.
Supplemental question, Conrad.
Yes, please, sir. Thank you. But the legal element was still to be negotiated. Why did the minister not allow that process?
That was not something that was in my hands at that point, because, and again, I don't want to get into tit for tat. Guernsey said the FDS have been eliminated, therefore we're negotiating with Condor/Brittany Ferries. End of story. That didn't give me any room within that joint process to enter into those negotiations. That's one of the reasons why we ultimately had to bring the joint process.
Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. Just to inform the Assembly as a member of the scrutiny panel that we will obviously be scrutinising more on this. If I could ask the Minister to explain, did he consider withdrawing from the joint procurement process, given what he and the Guernsey government knew about the financial position of Condor Ferries? And why did he therefore continue to engage in the process when surrounded by so much financial uncertainty, which has led us to this point?
So this, I mean, obviously this is an area of legality. This is an area of where you turn to advice, an officer's advice in a big way. I had been suggesting some days in advance of the actual abandonment decision that, you know, we needed to exit from this process. There were various reasons, including the protections that the existing process gave us to operate within. That meant that we stayed within the process for perhaps a few more days longer than I personally would have thought. But again, because I am not, I'm not an officer. I'm not. I can say this. I do not have the, all of the technical expertise to know exactly when is the appropriate time to exit from the process. So I took the advice, which was to remain within the process until the point at which we did.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Thank you, sir. The Minister made reference to the fact that he was the decision maker, so there are still some questions as to why he didn't make that decision, irrespective of the advice given to him. The question is really about if DFDS was his preferred provider, what has the Minister received from DFDS that gives him more assurance that this is the more preferable operator?
I think it's really important to say that I do not stand here saying the preferable operator. What I stand here is saying that I was looking at these bids and I was looking at the process, and what I could read in the bids did not match what was come out of the process. That was the real problem from my perspective. The two were at odds with each other. And given And in itself, you could potentially overlook that if the other operator had that, if I had those reassurances around the financial stability that I was asking for, because there's no world in which I wanted to be in this position today. I did not want this to happen. And I would have loved to be able to say to Guernsey, yes, let's go. There are reasons why the other bid can still work, let's go with that. But because of those financial questions that remained at large, I did not feel able to say, yes, therefore, because of the elimination, I will move with the other one. It was that simple. I could not sign up in my heart to a 15-year contract when I was not reassured. And it doesn't, and I know other parties will, to use a colloquialism, pour shade on my lack of reassurance in the finances. But that's why I'm here as minister. And honestly, I have run this past many, many members of the states, and many members of the states, including the Council of Ministers, have come to the same conclusions as I have, that it was not possible to move. And
again, Minister, I must ask you to bring your answer to a close. Does Rennie want to ask questions? Deputy Jeune.
Thank you, sir. And I suppose the Minister has touched on this before about the viability of the route, but it was mainly in relation to getting people on and off the island. But of course, as we've been discussing earlier, the cost of living in Jersey has been going up, and therefore, and that is related, of course, to bringing in goods to Jersey, as 99% of our goods come in via freight. And so just would like the Minister maybe to explain a little bit more about his point that he made, that he felt the viability of the route was supported if we had UK direct to Jersey or Jersey direct to France, and what kind of mechanisms are put in place to ensure that doesn't creep up and there isn't an increase in the cost of living or cost of goods to Jersey because of that direct route.
Look, and thank you, Deputy, because the Deputy's absolutely correct in the sense that I have been assured that the route is viable, that, I believe that we will see bids very much based on existing bids in terms of pricing and things like this. But until we see that through this new process, I won't know. And obviously there's a period of negotiation in that, but we will talk with both companies. And I still talk with an open mind. And I think it's really important for members to understand that was that process. We are now entering a new process. I am still prepared, should I have the right guarantees, the right satisfaction around financing, I'm still prepared to work with either bidder. That doesn't concern me. But until we see the ink on the paper, we won't know exactly in terms of pricing that we're in a new process with new bids. It's that simple.
Supplementary question, Deputy.
Yes, sir. And you, the Minister talked about that kind of freight cost component in the old bid that now I assume will be brought over to the new bidding process. But could the Minister explain a little bit more how to ensure that prices won't rise exponentially because of this new piece over the 15-year period, and what kind of mechanisms are used for that?
Yes, it would be perfectly normal, and I believe this was part of the previous tender process as well, is to put limits on the amount of price rises, RPI plus X, that sort of thing. And I would expect that to be part of this new process.
Deputy Joseph.
Thank you, sir. I'm grateful for the Minister to making the statement, but it is undoubtedly an extraordinary concerning situation. And we're now hearing from the Minister, which is going to lead to my question about how to move forward. We're now dealing with a situation of a failed tender process and a need for a swift revolution to secure reliable ferry services. In time, there's going to have to be lessons learned, because I don't think we should be here. Nobody would want to be here. How is the Minister going to ensure that what has not happened in the process so far, that there is rigorous scrutiny of and backbenchers can, in private, as necessary, oversee what he's doing, ask questions, so that actually we can together act in this, it's the spirit of this assembly, where we're supposed to be constructive scrutineers. And on a point of detail, can the Minister clarify the specific legal point on which DFCS failed on the joint bid, and whether he thinks that that issue can be dealt with in now the single, as yet known, tender process? I hope that's okay as a question, sir.
I think it is, yes.
So I think with regard to the first part of the Deputy's question, Deputy referred to scrutineer. That's exactly what scrutiny is here for. I am open to scrutiny, etc. Yes, the Vice Chair of the panel sitting next to the Deputy, and I will be happy to invite scrutiny into that process, to oversee, to look at that process. I have nothing to hide. The new process is set up to be rapid, it is set up to be fair, it is set up to deliver a result by the end of this month, because we need to give certainty to the island. So I think it's really important. We have this plan, it is a clear plan, it is an executable plan, and we are executing at the moment. I am completely reassured by that, and I'd be happy for scrutiny to look at that. I have genuinely nothing to hide, but what I am keen on is we need to move. Islanders want certainty. We need to move quickly to deliver that result at the end of it.
Supplemental question, Deputy?
The question about DFCS and the legal point that meant that DFCS failed the joint tender indicates that there was an important issue where guarantees couldn't be given. Has that been able to be resolved, if it's important?
So we asked in clarification questions about, so I won't speak to exactly what the legal point is, that's not fair, I believe, on the tender bids. But in clarification questions, we received the comfort that we required that that is an entirely negotiable point. We are happy with that, and that was always my thing, is why is somebody being eliminated now when that's yet to be negotiated? Obviously, if that element wasn't negotiated appropriately in the coming process, then it wouldn't be appropriate to award it to them. That's fine, but we need to have those discussions first.
So that was a point of clarification on the question that I had answered.
Well, I'm afraid you're out of time in any event. We're now at...
Were there any other members that wanted to ask questions on this important matter?
There are a number of other members who wish to ask questions, but I'm afraid standing orders permit 2 seconds of 15 minutes and nothing more.
And it's not possible to lift standing orders on this matter of
Well, if
public
you lift
importance?
standing orders on this, the Minister had no right to make a statement anyway. So the standing order is the standing order. I mean, I will double check the position because I realise this is... Which standing order? After the member of the States has made the statement, the presiding officer will allow a period of up to 15 minutes for other members to ask him questions. A member of the States may propose without notice that the time allowed for questions regarding the contents of the statement is extended by up to 15 minutes. And there's nothing more beyond that. And this has always been, and that is the standing order under which the Minister takes a statement in the first place. So an application to raise this standing order would simply bring this process to an end because there will be no context in which it was happening in accordance with State's procedure.
I'm troubled, sir, because this is an issue of such public importance. And I don't know whether you can guide that there's been talk about an extraordinary state sitting to discuss this. There is a huge public importance of this matter, and this is the first time we're hearing about it. And so I just seek... I don't know what to do, sir, but this is a matter of massive issues.
Officer, I'm entirely sympathetic to the idea that there are members who wish to ask questions who have run out of time and were simply not able to do it. There may be another mechanism, but it's likely to be not until the next sitting of the Assembly, unless there's a requisition for an extraordinary sitting, which it would be open to members to do. And one would have to work out what the business process for that would be, because otherwise you would be left with the same standing order making a statement in 2 periods of 15 minutes. So there'd need to be some kind of debate topic which could be properly discussed. But I don't think I'm in a position to assist members any further at this juncture. Yes.
If I may, sir, maybe repeat what the Minister is about to say, sir, but we've discussed this before, and I'm sure the Minister would be amenable and we would undertake to provide a private briefing for members where questions could be answered as soon as possible, sir. Thank you.
So that is an obvious answer, it seems to me. Yes,
Yes, sir, I entirely support exactly what the Chief Minister said. I would also like to just quickly put on record my thanks for the Chief Minister, the Council Minister's scrutiny, and those States members who I've spoken to. I apologise, I won't be able to speak to all States members. But I'd like to thank all for their support in this. They understand that it is a really difficult situation that I am in. And I'm really grateful because through the difficult times in the past couple of weeks, genuinely, members' support is one of the things that's kept me going. Thank you.
That concludes the in-committee debate. We now move to the arrangement for future business. Conrad.
Thank you, sir. Arrangement of public business. As we're all aware, our next sitting on the 26th of November has been scheduled to debate the proposed budget, the government plan. And bearing in mind this is a very long debate, I therefore would like to propose that, as happened last year, we sit on the Monday afternoon, which is the 25th of November at 2:15 p.m, to enable us to get through oral questions and questions without notice. If we agree to meet on Monday afternoon, 25th of November, we can then commence the government plan proposed budget afresh on Tuesday, 26th of November. New items in addition to the consolidated order paper are amendments 18 to 29, which have now been lodged, and draft finance 2025 Jersey Law 202 P72 2024 Second Amendment. These are for debate at the next sitting. P66 has been deferred to the 10th, along with the amendment to standing orders, P80 2024, amendment to standing orders timeline for ministerial appointments. Sir, I would like to propose that we commence the sitting for the proposed budget, the government plan, on Monday afternoon, 25th of November at 2:15 p.m. So I make the proposition. Thank you.
Is the proposition seconded?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Does anyone wish to speak upon the proposition? Deputy Joseph.
Thank you, sir. I welcome I'm not sure how many times we've had a budget with 25 budget amendments, and it's going to take time, and members' patience is going to need to be to allow members to hear. I have 4 amendments. May I urge the Treasury and the Council of Ministers to engage in constructive discussions and to let members know early whether they're going to have their amendments accepted, amended, or whatever. One of the repeated refrains throughout this process, sir, has been the lack of information from the government. It's difficult to criticise, but we need engagement early to avoid a lengthy debate that members have to listen to turgid debates where we only get information at the last minute. And I just urge the government to meet with amenders and see if we can find a way forward. I express that in the hope that this Assembly's time is not wasted.
Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition of the Conotab to sit at 2? Yes, Chief Minister.
I just wanted in response to Deputy, so the Council of Ministers are scheduled to meet tomorrow to start discussing the budget amendment, and we undertake to get back to scrutiny of members as soon as possible with our reaction to that. So we're mindful of that position and undertake to work expeditiously.
Very well. Does any other member wish to speak? You wish to respond at all to Conotab?
No, thank you, sir. I'd like to propose that as we have had no detractors, I'd like to propose the arrangement of business and that we will all meet at 2:15 on Monday the 25th of November.
Those in favour of adopting, kindly show. Those against? Very well. The Assembly will stand adjourned until 2:15 on the 25th of November.